we needed topics, and we got them. We got a ton of questions, great ones from the folks on Subtext, but I've been getting this one like every Freaky Friday mailbag. I think there are people out there that like to hear us, Bill Landis, and I'm Austin Ward, talk about some of our experiences covering Ohio State. So this is going to be a little time travel Tuesday.
Unbelievable. Okay.
And I think it's a fun one, which is, and I didn't let you prepare, so this will be off the top of the dome. What is the most memorable play that you have covered at Ohio State?
Oh, man. I mean, there's one that jumps to mind immediately. It's Curtis Samuel going into the end zone against Michigan in double overtime. That was 2016. I always want to say 2018. 2018 is when Ohio State kicked the crap out of Michigan.
That was a very different game.
That was a very different game. Memorable plays in that game, too. But no, that's number one for me for sure, with a caveat, too, because I think maybe for a lot of people who have covered Ohio State over the time we have might say Zeke against Alabama. I didn't see that play. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before. I'm sure I have, but I was in the elevator with my good friend Dario Wasserman, who I was working with at Cleveland.com at the time, and we were going down to the field, to the media workroom down on field level, and we hear this crazy loud, just roll of thunder. I'm like, oh, I wonder what happened. It was Zeke running for 85 yards through Alabama's defense. So I didn't see that one.
Which one of you had to write about it without catching it live?
I believe I did. Yeah. Oh, no, you know what? No, Ari did. I remember because I remember his lead almost verbatim. Yeah. So I would have to say Curtis Samuel's up there, but there are a lot, man. I could probably run through 5 to 10 of them. That's important.
So why that one? Why Curtis Samuel? Then? I mean, obviously it's iconic, and the leap into the end zone. I feel like the play before on 3rd and 8, was it? The set up, the JT Barrett sneak, that was almost a more impressive Curtis Samuel play than the actual touchdown.
Yes, that's actually a good point.
I'm not trying to quibble with your list.
No. It's for the game-winning touchdown. It's the moment, right? And it's the exhale of all the Ohio State fans in the stadium, which is you could not find a more tense situation in all of college football than Ohio State coming this close from losing to Michigan at home in double overtime and then winning it the way that they won it. But in terms of an exciting play, yeah, of course, when Curtis Samuel runs to one sideline, turns around and runs back the other way, and then still manages to get almost all of the 9 yards back to set up the 4th and 1 so JT Barrett can get the first down and extend the drive. He got the first down, by the way, and extend the drive.
Yeah, he was not short.
He was not short. A.J. Alexander's backside tried its best, but JT Barrett was not short. But, yeah, in terms of just sheer craziness, that play from Curtis Samuel prior to the touchdown was absolutely insane. And I also think, too, I wasn't covering Ohio State at this time. I was actually covering Penn State when Braxton scored the most exciting 1-yard touchdown.
Don't take mine.
Yeah, oh, that's yours? Okay. Okay, well, no, go ahead. Please speak on it. I watched it. I was there in the stadium watching it, but I was covering the other team.
No, we don't. We're still talking about yours.
Okay.
I didn't want you to go too far down this road because I only waited 3 years before writing an oral history of that play because I'm that's how good it was.
I would have wrote it the next week.
It was nuts. So Curtis Samuel scores double overtime. Everyone goes wild. The horseshoe was a madhouse.
Yep.
Did you write about that play? What did you do to cover the end of that game?
I don't remember. I'm sure that I did. I'd have to go back and check the Cleveland.com archives. Remember exactly what I wrote. That is the hard part about not sleeping when you have a 1-year-old child. Is your memory tends to go. But I think I wrote off that game. I mean, I wrote off the game for sure. I think I wrote off that play specifically, but I couldn't tell you what. I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember because even at the time, I felt like. And this is not to pat myself on the back in any way, shape, or form. I felt like extending the play and Curtis Samuel, it was going to be lost to history because then what happened afterwards, and then Jim Harbaugh throwing a fit about the spot, and then the touchdown comes after that. I want to make sure that people remember the play that actually mattered.
Yeah.
So I didn't write about the touchdown. I didn't write about the spot. Those were part of the overall story. But I did feel like Curtis Samuel's extending that play sideline to sideline. Don't let it be lost to history. That's what I want to write about.
No, and those are important to highlight. This is like a crazy tangent that I guess I apologize in advance for taking people down, but like
it's Tangent Tuesday.
Doug and I are working on this thing for Kings of the North about the Colorado Michigan game 1994 that I mentioned on Monday's Daily, and like everyone knows that game for being the play that like Michael Westbrook had the Hail Mary at the buzzer, right? But like earlier in the second half of that game, like a guy from Colorado made like a touchdown saving tackle that like if he doesn't make that tackle, then the Hail Mary doesn't matter, right? The Hail Mary doesn't happen, but or maybe it happens, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't win the game. Like those are the kind of plays that often get overlooked. Like the greatest plays in college football history. I'm sure there is a preamble to that maybe it's not always exciting as the Curtis Samuel play, but there's always like a thing that has to happen before that can matter. And you're right, we do tend to overlook those things. But yeah, that the individual effort on Curtis's run, was it a run or was it a swing pass?
Thought it was like a swing pass out to the right.
Yeah,
it's snuffed out. He's got to cut it all the way back going to the left. JT, I think, tried to throw out there, get a little bit of a block on it. It's like not the way any of it was designed.
No, but that is sheer will and want to, and not wanting to leave your team in a fourth and very long situation to try to win that game. So shout out to Curtis Samuel.
It feels like he is almost exclusively remembered for that play as well, like, which is not fair because he's still earning an NFL paycheck. I guess in some ways it's good that he's got an iconic moment and an iconic photo to sum up his career at Ohio State. But like, he was it all of 2016? Where it was like Urban Meyer was trying to count up the touches for him, or did that happen again?
He was like the whole offense that year.
Yeah.
It was whatever Curtis could do and JT running. Like they didn't have very much going on, and it's a shame really that we only got 1 year of that. His was a very unique is an oxymoron, but his was a unique skill set at Ohio State that I tend to believe like was not appreciated nearly enough in the moment. Like Ohio State has had crazy athletes. They certainly have had some hybrid guys that kind of started with Urban's time here, and Curtis I think is like the shining example of that. Like the kind of the only one who like sort of really like actually brought it to fruition, right? But even then, like I still don't know that he's kind of counted or talked about in quite the right terms. Like he was a pretty special player, certainly in 16, but he had moments prior to that. Was it the year before? No, it must have been 16 too. He had that long touchdown run at Penn State, right? Just a really dynamic player who, like you're right, like has made himself a fine NFL career. And like, is he a superstar in the NFL? No. But he's gotten a couple contracts, and he's making a decent chunk of money, and he's a good player, and he was an excellent player at Ohio State.
Do you think some of the Curtis Samuel skill set, how much of it do you think Emeka Egbuka has, or if there's somebody else that could fill that, who would it be?
I think Emeka has some. I think probably the difference between the two is like, and this is just my opinion, I guess, but Ohio State coaches might have a different opinion. Like Curtis to me was like a running back who could play some receiver, and Emeka is a receiver who you can kind of hand the ball off to. I don't know if you're gonna like put Emeka like in the pistol and run outside zone with him like you would with Curtis Samuel. So it's not quite the same thing, but I think it's pretty close. I think Brandon Inniss has some similarities too, and Brandon Inniss obviously played high school quarterback, so he's kind of used to getting the ball in the backfield. I think those are probably the two on this current roster that have that skill set. But it's also we've just not seen Ohio State like do a whole lot with that kind of skill set, frankly, because they haven't had to. Like 2016 was a unique situation where it's like Curtis Samuel is our best running back and our best receiver. That's certainly not the case on this roster with the running backs that Ohio State has.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to look back at that and that gap, like post Evan Smith, post Michael Thomas, the transition period there for the wide receivers room, which it turned around like almost immediately after that. You know, you got into the Terry McLaurin era and Paris Campbell and Johnny Dixon and KJ Hill, but like that 16 group was such a, I don't know, aberration. When you look.
17, you could see it like starting to turn on in 17. And then 18 obviously got very good, and it's kind of been jet fuel since then. But I don't know. I guess it was just cycling out some older guys and some younger guys having to step up in the spots they weren't quite ready for, which happened. But thank God Curtis Samuel was around. I don't know what Ohio State is that year if he's not. The defense that year was, I think, like one of the all-time defenses at Ohio State.
It sure was.
And obviously, you have JT who can do a whole lot and erase a lot of minuses for you. But if that offense was just JT, I don't know that team gets to the playoff.
Does that memory of Curtis Samuel's double overtime touchdown, does that mean that you think the 16 Ohio State-Michigan game was the most memorable one that you've covered?
Yeah. It's that or the Sugar Bowl. This is kind of weird. Like the national championship, I would actually have like kind of far down the list, right?
It was boring.
It was boring. And I remember vividly going in to the national championship game. We were doing a video in the media hotel, like previewing the game, and the Dr. Pepper guy was walking around. And I said during the video, like, I think Ohio State is better than this team unequivocally at every position other than quarterback because Marcus Mariota won the Heisman Trophy. And Doug looked at me like I was nuts. And I was like, no, this Oregon team is not good. And Ohio State showed us that when they beat us. So, yeah, the national championship was like boring. And
you could tell on media day.
Yeah.
You could tell when they got off the bus. Like, this team does not belong
They don't
here.
have it. Well, and especially like after seeing Alabama, it's like Ohio State just vanquished Alabama. Of course they're going to beat this team. So that game, I mean, it was awesome for them to do it, and like for them to win the first college football playoff national championship was historic. But as a game, that pales in comparison to a lot. Michigan's definitely up there. Sugar Bowl is definitely up there. The comeback against Penn State in 2017 is pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah.
Those are probably the three that probably jump out to me right away. Yeah.
So it's wild to me that the first play, when I think about that, like the most iconic play, the one that I have the most vivid memories of covering for Ohio State, is from my first year covering Ohio State. And yes, there were no stakes. They weren't going to have a postseason opportunity. They were robbed of a chance where they were likely going to play for the national championship. And Penn State was dealing with the exact same thing. So, like, why is this a game and a play that sticks in my mind? Well, because it was something that I just have never seen anyone do, and I don't know that I've ever seen it since. Like, when you look at the evolution of Ohio State at quarterback and Braxton's place in it, I think sometimes he gets a little bit shortchanged in it because he was not a passing threat on the level of a Dwayne Haskins or C.J. Stroud. That was not where he was going to make the biggest impact, and that's also why he finished his career playing at wide receiver. But it was the pure, unadulterated, raw, insane athleticism was never on display better than on that play, the 1-yard touchdown. You look at it, I remember writing that in my lead for the 3 years later oral history of this play. It was like, it's the most electrifying thing you'll ever see in a stat sheet. Braxton Miller, 1-yard touchdown rush. Doesn't do it any justice.
It does not. I can't remember my exact reaction watching it in the moment. I think it was sort of like, whoa. Like, it was just like, it almost felt fake. Like pure video game stuff. And it made me, like, when I think back about it, like I said, I wasn't covering Ohio State at that time. I do get a little sad that, like, I never got to cover a Braxton Miller quarterback season because my first season was 2014. And by the time I knew I was covering Ohio State, Braxton had already gotten injured. It was like 3 days before the Ohio State-Navy game that I found out I was going to be covering Ohio State. So, like, I got the spin move the next year, but I never got the full Braxton Miller experience, unfortunately.
So when I wrote about this for ESPN.com, and it was in the wake of the spin move, and people were going nuts over it, and I just didn't believe it. Having covered all of Braxton's previous games, I was like, why are we going crazy for the spin move? That's like the easiest thing he's ever done is get 10 yards to set up a defender. Of course he's going to make them look ridiculous. Why are we going nuts for that? And I asked Braxton in 2015 when I was working on the story, and I talked to Reed Fragel and Michael Thomas and Urban Meyer, coaching staff, Nick Vanette, guys who were on the field for this, including one of the Penn State cornerbacks where the play was coming back his way, to get as many thoughts as possible. But I obviously had to talk to Braxton about that. And I'm like, hey, people are going nuts about the spin move, but that's not your best play ever, right? And I didn't tell him he's like, no, I think Penn State was number one. I was like, thank you. That's exactly what I needed. Like that. There were so many layers to it because I think many people watched it and said, well, just a great read by Braxton. It was not his own read. He was not supposed to pull the football. So from the very start, Penn State knows it. It's supposed to go to Carlos Hyde up the middle. You're like, oh, just a great adjustment and knowing the play and having something set up. It wasn't blocked for a pull. It wasn't supposed to be pulled. Braxton saved Carlos. Well, Carlos still got destroyed.
Yeah,
but
he sure did.
Decapitated was, I think, Braxton's word for it. But it was just instinctual athleticism that Braxton had that I just have not seen many people do that
No,
since.
yeah, like who? Lamar Jackson was before or after that? I can't remember. After.
He was the 16 Heisman winner, right?
Yeah. So
17 Heisman winner.
Lamar is like certainly up there in terms of like kind of take your breath away athlete at quarterback. I mean, Braxton was every bit of that. Maybe people tend to forget that because he never got to finish his career the right way. Wasn't the quarterback at Ohio State obviously the year that it won the national championship, was just like out of sight, out of mind, just kind of along for the ride. So he probably doesn't get his due as just like, I don't know, if you rank the top 10 most dynamic college quarterbacks of the last 20 years.
Wow.
I mean, he's got to be top 5, right? If not top 2.
Yeah, I mean, if you're breaking them into categories and saying like Lamar Jackson and Braxton Miller, dual threat athletes, are over here, and Dwayne Haskins and C.J. Stroud, or
I'm not talking like NFL stuff, right? I'm just talking like the ball is in this guy's hands. I'm going to stop what I'm doing and make sure I'm watching it because like the craziest thing you've ever seen might happen here, and I don't know. It's a handful, I think, of guys who had that characteristic about them, and Braxton was one of them.
He did that a lot.
Yeah. Can I mention another play?
Of course you can.
That stands out in my mind and has certainly been lost to time because people choose not to remember the Ohio State Clemson Fiesta Bowl shutout. Malik Hooker's interception in that game is maybe the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like where he is when the ball is thrown to where he actually catches it, and it was Deshaun Watson and who was the little receiver that played for the Raiders,
Hunter Renfrow. The ball comes out of Deshaun Watson's hands. You look at Hunter Renfrow and it feels like, oh, he's open. It's a touchdown. And then here comes Malik Hooker across the entire field to pick the thing out of the air. And I think I might have yelled "holy blank" in that press box. No profanity.
No profanity. I'm not, nor on the show unless you're Berm.
Plays by his own rules.
Yeah, he does play by his own rules. But that was like, you want to talk about insane individual efforts. That was crazy. And that was like, yep, that guy's not playing here next year. we knew that beforehand, but that was like the stuff stamped. Was like, yeah, he's gone.
That would be a fun one. That's too tough to do off the top of the head. The plays, the best Ohio State plays that are lost to memory, maybe because they came in a loss. And there's a few to choose from in Ohio State Clemson games, unfortunately.
There are a few, yeah. Just savor the last one. The last one.
Including the one that was an absolute heist and robbery from them in 2019, which you have like Garrett Wilson's up the ladder,
the
true freshman catch.
Like on the first drive of the game, right? Yeah.
You've got this one's not really lost to memory, but Okuda's touchdown that should have stood. I mean, I don't know. Thinking about that game,
Sean Waite's hit on Trevor Lawrence that wasn't targeting. Pop.
That game gives me hives. I remember like snap judgments or whatever version we were doing then from that game. I was just like befuddled.
You just don't know what to say because sometimes I cover a game, right? And sorry for bringing this back up, by the way. And like you hear a lot of like, oh, we got screwed, this, that, and I'm like, well, like you could have done this, and this, right? Like really was in your control, and like certainly there were some things that Ohio State could have done in that game a little bit better. But after that game, it was just like you're right. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to tell you. I wish I could go back and change some of those things that happened.
They had 15 things that every single one of them had to go against Ohio State in that game, and they all did.
Yeah, that's like the. If you want to be a persecuted fan, and certainly you were entitled to at times, like that is the one you put, I think, at the top of the list of. I can't believe all this happened.
When you think about all, like we make that list of things like Ryan Day's had to deal with in the shifting landscape of college football, like having a semifinal stolen from him in his first year as a head coach. You just throw that in the adversity bucket.
You do. It would have been nice for him to get to the national title game in his first year and play. Would have been an absolute banger of a game against LSU.
I still think they would have won, but we don't have to talk about that here either. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this little stroll down memory lane, a little time traveling Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed it as well, Bill.
I did enjoy it. It was unexpected, but enjoyable, yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do something similar again because, as a reminder, it's May.
It is May.
So if we had something current and new to talk about with Ohio State, I promise we would, and we may again this week. We'll see what happens. We'll keep waiting. The Buckeyes are getting back into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, the full group. Classes resuming, workouts going on, so we'll hopefully have some more stuff to break down for you in the coming days. Maybe we'll hear from some of those members of the coaching staff. But until then, Hopefully you enjoyed this episode on a Tuesday of the Podcast Daily. He's Bill Landis, and I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.